I missed Wednesday because we were moving.
Okay.
Was 78 on Wednesday?
Um, 78 was actually from 2 classes ago. It was the practice over continuity. I just didn't ask him to turn it in until last class. Made it. Caitlin. I watched highlights this morning. I wasn't gonna stay up that late.
What team were you going for?
I didn't have too much of a preference. Who did you want to win?
I wanted 49ers.
Well, how come?
Because we have FHS players on there.
I had Dre in class
Oh, that's cool.
for geometry a long time ago. Nice guy. Janie, Piper. Okay, you guys might want to double check that you turned in 78, and I need you to get out 82 that I gave to you last class that we didn't work on.
Good morning, FHS. Today is Monday, February 12th, 2024. Please join me in a minute of silence.
There's 82 over there.
Yeah, they should all be in there.
Please stand if you are able and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and have a great day.
Alright guys, our plan today is we're gonna finish by practicing up more difference quotient practice. So last time I saw you, which was last Wednesday, because it was a B week last week, we did some notes on difference quotient, and and we worked through difference quotient practice 1 together. But I also had you pick up difference quotient practice 2. I just didn't make you or assign you any of that to do. So that's going to be our first thing to check off our list today. Make sure that we finish getting in enough practice of that. So again, you should already have number 82, but you may not have numbered it last time. So in just a minute, I will go over one of each of the 3 types again as a quick little reteach, and then ask you to try the back page for you to get some more practice there. And then I've got the answers with some work on the website, so those will be easy for you to check. And then finally, last part of this unit is number 83, bless you, which is today's handout. This is the review. So if you glance at the review for a second, go ahead and number it as 83. It kind of starts off by outlining some of the important skills before it gets into some of the questions here. This is a little bit longer of a review, but you guys will have the majority of class to work on that. The other thing is, typically once we do a review, the next class is the test, and for this one we have one more class. So your test over this stuff will be on Friday, but again, it's a longer review. Last year I think it had the lowest test average of anything we did second semester, so it does require a little bit more effort there. So hopefully you can make a lot of progress on that. Alright, so 82. I know some of you have already done this and turned it in. You can see I'm going to ask that you turn in difference quotient practice 1 and 2 together in Google Classroom. So those of you that already did this and checked your answers and you don't feel like you need a refresher, you can tune me out and just start moving on to your test review. But for everybody else, go ahead and start up with me, please. So when you are asked to apply the difference quotient to whether it's a polynomial, a radical, or a rational, these are the only 3 types we would potentially throw at you. All of these questions started and ended the same. So they started off by you needing to memorize the difference quotient. Again, my suggestion is still to force yourself to write it down every single time, so that every single question, that repetition will help you memorize it. Of course, if you misremember it, then you're not going to apply it correctly on the test, and you're going to miss out on some points. Second step for all of these questions is understanding what this is saying. So I'm going to do questions 1, 2, and 3, step 2, right at the beginning. F of x plus h means everywhere there's an x, plug in an x plus h. Then subtract away the whole function, and then put the whole thing over h. So that's what it would look like for question 1. And there's f of x plus h minus f of x all over h for question 2. And f of x plus h minus f of x all over h for question 3. So none of the second step should not be considered harder for any of these. Just knowing how to apply it doesn't really matter how messy it gets. Now, for each of these question types, they're going to simplify differently. The algebra is different. This is a complex fraction, so we're going to have to make it not be a complex fraction when we get to that one. This one, the only way to move forward is with conjugates, so we'll talk about that when we get there. And then the one that you probably should feel the most comfortable with is one like this, because it's just the algebra you feel more comfortable with. You've got some foiling. Make sure that you don't just do x squared plus h squared here. If you need to, out to the side. X plus h times x plus h is x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. So I foiled that. I distributed a 7 and I distributed a negative. And I'd kind of like to distribute this 5. Just be careful here. If you're trying to do all of this at once, make sure you guys don't distribute the 5 before you do the square. You got to do order of operations. Exponents come before multiplication. So the safest bet is to do it like I did it. If you try to do too much in a single step, then you're good chance you're going to miss some of it from just careless errors. Okay, and now we're near the end of the question, and again, all 3 of these types should feel fairly similar to finish off, such that most of this should add out to 0. So 5x squared, I know that this is supposed to cancel, so I can see up here, I don't know why, I distributed this negative to these 2 but not this one. So those add to 0, and these 2 add to 0, and these add to 0. And for this question type, anything that's left behind should have an h in it, which is how I knew I had a distributing mistake a second ago. And so if you want to visualize that a little bit better, you could factor out an h out of all of those. And then the last step for all of these questions is dividing out the h. So what we would be looking for is a 10x plus a 5h plus a 7. So the bulk of the middle of that question, foiling, distributing, combining like terms. Whereas question 2, I guess you can distribute the 6, but that doesn't really do that much. And there's nothing to foil, so you just can't take the same approach. So when it's this type, the only way to move forward is to multiply the top and the bottom by the same thing. Specifically, the conjugate of the numerator. So notice I changed the minus sign in the middle to a plus sign. That makes it conjugate. Now when we multiply these fractions together, denominator times denominator, I get h times this mess of stuff. So I'm just going to leave it h times that mess of stuff. I can't really do anything with that. I know the last step's going to be to cancel out an h. That's why I'm choosing not to distribute it through. But when you multiply the numerators, it should clean up a lot more than it might appear at first. The whole purpose of multiplying by a conjugate is it makes things simplify nicely. So if I do the first part of FOIL, the square root of something times the square root of itself just gives you that something. I'll go ahead and distribute the 6 while I'm at it. The outer part of FOIL and the inner part of FOIL will cancel. That always happens when you multiply by conjugates. It's fine if you don't want to memorize that, but your work's going to be a little messier here, and then you should add those to 0 anyway. And then the last part of FOIL, square root of 6x minus 2 times square root of 6x minus 2 would be 6x minus 2, but one's positive and one's negative, which makes the 6x minus 2 negative. Not the 6x, the whole thing, 6x minus 2. So either put parentheses or just immediately distribute the negative, one or the other. So I guess you have to be considering conjugates, otherwise you would get stuck pretty early in this question. But now it should finish like question 1. 6x's add to 0, the 2's add to 0, and in the end, times h divided by h cancels. So our final answer for this would be 6 over what the conjugate was. So same first 2 steps, same last 2 steps, or last step, but that question type had different algebra in the middle. Conjugates, the only thing that would move you forward there. Alright, the third and final type we would potentially throw at you on the test is starting with a rational function. After you apply the difference quotient, we have a complex fraction. So the algebra that's different about this question than 1 and 2 is we've got to get this out of a complex fraction. Now one thing I'm going to do, I don't really like this. Minus and negative, you guys know it's the same thing as adding a positive, so I think it's a good idea to go ahead and switch those, otherwise we may lose those. Okay, so to get this out of complex fraction form, I need to multiply everything by these smaller denominators. So I would like to multiply this by 8x plus 9. And if I want to multiply one of them by 8x plus 9, then they all get multiplied by 8x plus 9. I would also like to multiply everything by an 8x plus 8h plus 9 to make those two cancel. I chose to distribute the 8. I don't think it really matters too much, but so now that I've got both smaller denominators canceled out, I should be able to multiply what's left over here, and it should no longer be in complex fraction form. So first little fraction, what's left over is negative 2 times 8x plus 9. Over here, I'm left with the 2 times 8x, 2 distributed to 8h, and 2 distributed to 9. And in my denominator, I've got the h that's been there, the 8x plus 9 that I multiplied everything by, and the 8x plus 8h plus 9 that I multiplied everything by. Okay, that should be all that's unique about this question. Now it should finish like the first two. Most stuff should add to 0, 18 minus 18, 16x minus 16x, so that your very last step is canceling out h's. Timesing by h, dividing by h, cancel out and go to 1, and leaves us in the end 16 in the numerator and an 8x plus 9 times an 8x plus 8h plus 9 in the denominator. So we've reviewed complex fractions a couple times in the last few weeks, and again, I know you guys don't see a ton of that in Algebra 2, but that is an important algebra skill, so it will show up in other things for you as well, maybe even for us before the year's out. Okay, is there any specifics you guys would like to ask about questions 1, 2, or 3? Anything you didn't remember and I went over too quickly? What was the answer to question 4? 10x plus 5h plus 7. Okay, then the back page has an opportunity for you to practice one more time. So question 4 is like question 1, question 5 is the same type of question 2, and question 6 is the same type as question 3. So if you learned it well from last Wednesday, and or that quick reteach of one more example of each has helped you learn it all, then you should be good on those last 3. And if not, then that is your indicator that you need to let me see what you're doing and try to help you. I'll add that if you have me look at your work and you're kind of all over the place and you're showing some work here and not showing some work there, my hands are going to be tied. I can't get in your head and guess what your thought process was. You need to try to make your work show what you're doing so I can see where you're off or what you're not considering. So that would be the first thing I need you to do. Finish up the back page of that. And again, my website does have the answers and it has the work included. So if something is wrong, you might be able to look at that and see what your mistake was. And if you can't, I need you to ask. So finish that up first, and then I'd like you to turn in 81 and 82 together into the same Google Classroom assignment. 81 was the difference quotient practice 1 that we did last Wednesday. So once you finish those 3 questions on the back, those should be done and ready to turn in. So do that, please. And then I can give you the rest of the class to work on this review. And again, since we've got an extra day for review, it's not, your test isn't next class, it's the day after that. I can give you the whole class period to work on this. Check your answers, circle the questions you struggle with, circle the questions you ask me for help on or your neighbor for help on, circle the questions you have to look at your notes. Start paring down what topics really stuck with you versus which topics you're going to need to look at and potentially practice again. I guess the last thing I'd like to say about the review, and then I'll get out of your way a little bit here. But again, at the start here, I tried to just quickly remind you of some of the big topics that we did. So just kind of a list of the different things. Before, there's some random questions for you to practice. And you don't have to utilize this at all, I guess, and you don't have to utilize it today. But before you get to the test, if there's a skill or two or three that you know you need more practice on, I did create a bunch of short bit.ly links. So if, I don't know, if you know you struggle with dealing with limits where you have to do the conjugate thing, you can go to that bit.ly link, and that's the Khan Academy assignment, and of course you can just keep practicing those until you do feel confident. So try to provide some extra practice for you that way. Again, it's completely optional, but if you know you need that extra practice before Friday, then at least there's some easily accessible practice. Okay, does anybody have any questions about the classwork for today or what you need to be doing? Okay, then again, I will ask for a lot of questions on the board on Wednesday, but if you know that you need help with something today, there's really no benefit on delaying. You might as well try to get it cleared up, or as much of it cleared up as you can. So as you guys find questions on the test review or on the back page of 82, I guess, please let me know. You can bring it up here or raise your hand and I will come to you. But you've seen everything in this unit. Now it's just making sure that you remember it all for your test.